That's good.
I hope you all will have some time free out of the lab over the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm planning to take the weekend off. I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here. So Dr. Michael is here, and he's the Senior Licensing Associate at the Innovation Partnership Services Office. And he got his JD at Wake Forest School of Law, and then Ph.D. at JSNN and Nanoscience. So thank you so much for being here. We're looking forward to getting to learn more about your career path and what brought you to it, and what it kind of involves. So my first question is, what is tech transfer in your words?
Tech transfer is short for technology transfer, and it really describes an office within a university that works with the university researchers whenever they discover something that might have commercial value and patent potential, typically. And what we do is we try to engage those researchers that have discovered something that may have commercial viability and who are interested in exploring those commercial possibilities. And we evaluate that. It's often a technology, but it can be any type of discovery. Sometimes it's a learning model or some other type of more of a copyrightable type material rather than a patentable material. But typically, it's a technology of some kind. And we work with them, with the faculty that discovered the technology, to determine, one, if it's something that can be patented, and two, if it has commercial value that we can realistically explore with them. And if the answers to those two questions are both yes, then we ask them to submit a disclosure to our office, which describes their discovery. And we then evaluate it formally. And if everything still appears to be promising, I then engage patent attorneys that we work with through my office, and we file a patent application to try and protect that discovery. And then we start working with outside companies that we think might be interested in helping develop the commercial applications. So that might be a longer answer than you anticipated, but that's what the tech transfer process looks like from my perspective.
Thank you. So what is a typical day in your profession like?
Typical day. So I would say that my job falls into two different buckets. One of which is the intellectual property management that I do for the university. And that encompasses all the patents, all the copyrightable material, any other type of intellectual property.
Oh, I think you froze. No.
Non-disclosure agreements with outside companies that want to speak our research interests and ongoing research activities, to sharing materials between universities, to licensing intellectual property out to a company that wants to commercially develop it. So a typical day would be making sure that I have reviewed all of our current intellectual property and that everything that is being prosecuted with the patent office is on schedule, that I meet with the inventors if necessary to make sure that we have all the information we need from them, And there's typically 1 or 2 legal agreements that require my attention on a given day.
All right, thank you. I think you froze in the middle of that, but I think we got the gist. All right, so what made you pursue a career in tech transfer?
So as you pointed out in the beginning, I went to law school right out of college. And after that, I worked in private practice as an attorney for several years. And then realized that as I started to think more long-term, I was really interested, had always been interested in biology, just broadly speaking. And so I went back to graduate school when I was about 30 to get my master's in biology at UNCG. And when I finished that work, well, I should say that, yeah, shortly after I finished that work, I accepted a position at UNCG as a research scientist, which really extended from my graduate work. And I continued to work with the 2 faculty members that had served as my advisors. And in the course of that project, we discovered some things that we thought had commercial value. We were basically interested in exploring the microbial community in water supplies to see if we could utilize DNA bioindicators as water quality assessment tools. And that work led to so what we thought might be patentable inventions. And we engaged the technology transfer at UNCG at that time. And this was many years ago, so it was a cast of different individuals than the people that work in my office now. But one of those individuals was still in the office many years later when I went back to my Ph.D. in nanoscience. And as I started to finish up my doctorate, I approached that person and asked him if there might be an opportunity for me to work in the office, because I knew that with my legal background and my interest in science, it would be a good fit for an office that wants to explore the intellectual property potential of the university. And he had the director at that time, he had an MBA, and he had 20 years experience in clinical research with GlaxoSmithKline, but he didn't have a legal background. So he was looking for someone actually who had my credentials, so I could help with the legal parts of the position. And what actually started as a volunteer job ended up as a part-time position by the time I graduated with my PhD. And then within about a year, that part-time position evolved into a full-time job.
Great. That's great. Okay, so what made you want to pursue a JD?
Well, the short answer to that question is when I was finishing college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I knew that I had enough interest in the law that I believed getting a law degree would be like getting an MBA. It's a degree that can only help you pursue whatever your career ambitions are. If you have any type of business background or legal background, it's an asset in any position you might pursue. And so I thought of law school as an opportunity to stay in school for 3 more years and earn a useful degree while I figured out what I wanted to do at the same time.
I feel that. I was thinking about doing law school and decided to go to grad school instead, but I definitely feel that.
You might end up in law school yet.
I might. Okay, so how did your time at JSNN shape your career goals?
They shaped my career goals because I gained a much deeper knowledge in science, and in particular nanotechnologies, which when I started at JSNN and I was in the first class, nanotechnology was really just starting to come into its own. And it was becoming a hot button word in the scientific community. And I wanted to see where a degree in that field could take me. And I really believed that by the time I finished my PhD, I would end up working in industry, in research in some fashion. But I found that because I had the legal experience in the background coming in, when I reached out to the person I had mentioned earlier who directed the tech transfer office at that time, and he actually did have some work that he thought I could help support, it changed my focus. Instead of looking more at industry and research opportunities, I started thinking of ways I could combine my legal and my scientific backgrounds into a position and use more of my broader experience. And that job really offered that opportunity. So once I started working in the tech transfer office, I found that that was the work I wanted to do rather than stay in research, and decided to move out of the lab environment into the administrative environment.
All right. Okay. What advice would you give to a JSNN student interested in pursuing intellectual property as a career?
As a career? Well, first I would talk to the faculty that you know, because many of the faculty at JSNN are actively working with my office on patent applications for their discoveries. And they can be a really good source of information from the researcher perspective about what the intellectual property process involves. And they can also be a good source of information for their entrepreneurial interests. They may have contacts with outside companies that they have engaged who could be interested in some of their patentable research, and they can make introductions to some of these companies, and possibly help you explore internship opportunities with companies working in an intellectual property type position, where you would be working maybe in an office like mine within the company that handles the intellectual property portfolio. And so I would say talking to faculty, learning about their interactions with outside companies, and exploring the internship opportunities that might be available would be the best way to figure out if intellectual property is something that you want to pursue more seriously. You never really know a job until you do it, in my opinion, in an actual work environment. And I think an internship would be the best way to get that experience.
All right. And then what skills is it important we cultivate while we're at JSNN as students?
Well, your scientific knowledge is obviously a given. You'll be well prepared for a range of different research type positions, if that's the direction you want to go. But if you're more entrepreneurial minded and you think that you might want to be more engaged in a business type position, then I would talk to Dino Bear, for instance, who is in close contact with the companies that are interested in partnering with JSNN, either because they want to take advantage of the core facilities at JSNN, which are very unique and attract a lot of different companies, or because they want to form research collaborations with JSNN in some way, and try to make contacts with those companies that share your research interests and get your foot in the door in somewhere. I would say start that process sooner rather than later so that when you're finishing your doctorate, you've had a chance to really consider how you want to use that degree, whether you want to use it continuing to do the type of work you're doing as a graduate student, or if you want to translate that into something that's more commercial in nature.
Great. Thank you so much. That's all my questions. So I guess now I'll open it up to the audience for questions from them.
Yes.
Thank you for joining in, Michael. This is Sachin. I'm Nanoengineering student, and my question about patent is like there are what I roughly know that there are commercial patents and then there are academic patents. Is that kind of classification there? That is my first question. And second question is that if a patent is there, so how does its commercial aspect is controlled, or how it is known? Because there are many patents which are available online. We refer to them, we learn from it, but then where is the commercial aspect comes in picture? So my question is twofold: whether that kind of situation is there, that commercial and non-commercial patents, and if at all that kind of thing is there, then how is the commercial aspects are controlled, or they are known? Does that sound quite okay?
I believe I understand your second question. Could you repeat the first question for me?
Is there such kind of differentiation? That's my first question, that commercial and non-commercial patents, or all patents are commercial?
Oh, I see. So yes, if you want to think of it that way, a patent can have commercial value or no commercial value at all. Typically, an office like mine within a university is only interested in pursuing a patent application if we believe that invention does have commercial value. And that's because the university makes an investment of money to prosecute that patent application, which can be a very expensive process. And so we don't ordinarily pursue patent protection for inventions unless we think it has commercial viability. However, there are probably more patents out there that never actually translated into commercial value than the patents that did. Because to qualify for a patent, the criteria does not include commercial value. The criteria is simply it has to be novel, non-obvious, and useful in some way. But that doesn't mean that it will have commercial value. So the answer to that question is it can be either. And the second question, I believe, was how do we translate a patentable invention into commercial value?
Yeah, means how it is monitored and controlled, like, because if some patent is there which is available online, so how does that economics behind it is monitored or maneuvered?
Well, that's a good question, because patent applications and patents that actually eventually issue from those applications are eventually published, and therefore it becomes part of the public domain. But the fact that it's available doesn't give a person the right to recreate that invention, or make that invention, or sell or market that invention. Even if they can read a patent application or the patent that was issued from that application and understand how to make that invention for themselves, they legally cannot do that, because a patent gives the patent owner right to exclude other people
না স্যার 525 জন
period of 20 years.
এমএন স্টাফ আমাদের জন্য মেন্টর এটা
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I think he just accidentally unmuted.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so if for whatever reason a person that owns a patent discovers that somebody else found their published patent application and they are using that patent, making that patent and trying to market it for themselves, that creates a legal claim for the patent owner, which we call patent infringement. And that's how you can prevent somebody from taking advantage of your patented material until your patent actually expires 20 years later.
Okay, or otherwise, the party has to buy the rights to utilize it. Is that something that happens?
Yes, that's typically exactly what happens.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you sorted both the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In my office, when we file a patent application on a university researcher's invention, and then we find a company that's interested in developing it into a commercial product, we license the right to use that patent to that company. And that's basically what you just said. It's a way of selling it to a company, even though we retain the ownership, we give them the right to use the patent for their commercial purposes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Parth, you're still muted.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a, maybe I don't know whether it's obvious or not, but I have a question that if we have an idea and you think that it's a very solid, but can you protect it when you have an idea without, like, I'm in the process of it, generating the data and stuff, but it will take another 1.5 years. So I was just thinking that, can we protect it right now? Yes or no?
Yes. It depends on how early it is, but an invention has potential patent value from the moment the inventor conceives the idea.
Okay.
And can fully articulate that invention.
Okay.
But we say from the moment of conception, there is an invention.
Okay. So I can protect that idea if I start working on it from right away, because I'm from UNCG as well.
Yes.
So can you please help me with that?
Yeah. So are you working on this with a faculty advisor?
Yes.
Okay. Who is your advisor?
Oh, my main advisor is Dr. Kristen Dallinger.
What was the name again?
Dr. Kristen Dallinger. She is from North Carolina A&T University, and I am from UNCG. It's just the thing, like my former advisor quit this job and left the university. So I had to switch my lab. So that's why, like, it's a two different institution.
Yeah.
But I'm in joint school, as you know, like JSNN is like.
Yes, I know Kristen. So she's A&T faculty.
Yes.
You're a nanoscience student. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, that does happen. We do share inventions between the universities.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on who contributed to the invention. And if one or more inventors are employed at A&T or students at A&T, and other inventors are either employed or students at UNCG, then we work with each other. I work with my counterpart at A&T to evaluate that invention, as I had described earlier. And
yeah, because
make a decision about whether or not to pursue.
Yeah, being a student and a PhD student, when I was writing my research proposal, I came up with this, and then we thought that it can be potential a new invention. So that's why like today, like I'm still in a lab, so but still I was listening to you just to make sure that if I can save it from right away, then I would take a step ahead and come and talk to you, and you can help me like how we can proceed further to save this invention as like an innovative aspect of therapeutics.
Yes, why don't you send me an email and describe your invention in basic terms
Mm-hmm.
and when you came up with the idea and any other individuals who were part of that process, if anybody. If it was just you, that's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I will send you the email and also CC Dr. Dallinger, and I will just go and talk to her right now because she said like you can ask him and let's see what you are saying so that we if we need to move forward, we will take a step from next week and start the procedure and whatever the meetings we need to conduct, and we can move forward. That's what like my whole purpose to ask you this thing, that if you
Okay.
can save it from right away, let's do this. And you as a person, like you have a better knowledge than us, so you will be a great asset to us, like helping and writing down in a articulating the whole procedure, like how you write down. That's also important, right? Like your patent or something, your innovation. So that's what I want to do it, because I'm getting a good response from LinkedIn as well. And yesterday I was at a Triad Bio Night. So when I talked to this, I talk with a very different language, not using the technical terms and exactly what I'm doing, but they said it's something impressive. Like if it works, you can have your own company and stuff. So that's why like I got interested to ask you. And thank you for taking this talk today and connecting with us so that a person like me who never knew that you can save it from the idea that you had it. Otherwise, I would have come to you, I guess, 2 months ago, not right now.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it was helpful, and I will also share this with for your benefit as well as everyone else's. If you visit my office's website, the Innovation Partnership Services office website, um, among the menu choices, there are, I can't remember what the drop-down menus include, but I believe under the intellectual property choice, there should be a link to a form that we call an innovation disclosure form. And if you will look at that form, you can see the information that we request from an inventor whenever we're evaluating their idea,
Okay.
potential patent application.
So first I will go to your website, Innovation Partner, and
Partnership.
then I will download that form and fill it up
Yes.
and then contact you.
You can contact me first if you'd like. I think the form will give you a good idea for the type of information we would expect from you before we can formally accept the submission of your invention idea.
Okay. Because I'm still in the like data procedure, like it takes time for research and generate the data and stuff. It's just like what I can do beforehand so that it will be saved as like already established. Then I will generate the data, but it will take a longer time because it's a lengthier procedure. That's why I just wanted, but thank you for that. So I will just, after this maybe meeting, I will go to my advisor and talk.
So
And
the
yes.
best thing you can do until you have time to actually submit a formal innovation disclosure form is just not share your invention with the public.
Yeah.
Because once you disclose the invention, if you talk to other people about it or give a presentation or publish it in any way, you forfeit your patent rights.
Yes. No, I haven't disclosed this to anybody. No.
Okay.
Even if they ask me, I tell them in a layman language, like what I'm doing this. But I'm not saying what exactly I'm doing and how does it gonna work.
Okay. Then you should be fine. You're only talking in broad terms.
Raw terms. Yes. I'm not saying that, okay, this is the thing that will do this, and this will be thing, this will do this, and this is the ultimate result that I'm looking at. No, no, no. I'm just saying this is the overall idea of my whole proposal, that I'm working on therapeutics of the cancer, specifically breast cancer.
Okay.
And that's it. Like using the cells that are immune cells, but not saying like what actually I'm doing with these cells so that they will have this extraordinary properties that is come over the whole cancer.
Okay. All right. Then you should be fine then until you're ready to submit the form. If you haven't talked about it and don't plan to, then you won't have to worry about your patent.
Okay.
Right?
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm not sure who was next.
Yeah, thank you, Parth. I think the order is Hillary, Shibin, and then Josh.
So this is a huge question, but I was wondering how you determine if something is novel, non-obvious, and useful.
That's a really good question. It's a fundamental question, obviously, since those are the criteria for a patent. And in some ways, it can be very subjective. The best we can do to answer those questions is look at all the patents that are available in the database and the literature that's available in the field. Because everything that's already been published, whether it's a patent application, or scientific paper, is considered what we call prior art. And any prior art precludes you from being able to get a patent if your invention is similar enough to anything that's come before it. So we have to look at the novelty based on what's already been done. Because if we can find something similar to it, then obviously that reduces its novelty. And that's how we try to answer that question. If we find that there's really nothing like it anywhere in the public domain, then it will stand up to the novelty question. The obviousness has to do with whether or not someone with specialized knowledge in that same field would come up with the same idea that you came up with. And again, the scientific literature that's already out there in the patent applications in the database give us insight as to whether or not someone in the same field would likely come up with the same invention idea. And if we don't see anything that indicates anyone's really on the same track towards the invention you have, then it will probably meet the obviousness question. The usefulness or the utility question is the easiest one because most people's invention ideas have some usefulness. And it's not hard to make that argument patent office. But the first two criteria, the novelty and the obviousness, even after we finish our evaluation, we think it is novel and non-obvious, we often have to argue back and forth with the patent office, who will generally take the position that there already is work out there in the public domain that makes this invention not novel or makes it obvious. And it really becomes somewhat of a negotiation over time to persuade the patent office that it does meet those criteria.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time, Doctor. It was a really valuable time. My question is, basically the time taken from an invention to be carried into the market for the product is basically like 20 to 30 years. So it's almost like a rule of thumb. Always an invention takes 20 to 30 years to actually get into the market. So what are the basic problems and why does it take a long time, like almost 3 decades to carry out.
Well, certainly it can take that long. There are shorter pathways from an invention to a product than 20 years. But I think it is fair to say, as a general rule, you should expect it to be several years, at a minimum 5. But oftentimes I have seen products come from an initial idea and they mature over a period of 10 to 15 years and may be market ready. The factors that dictate how quickly an idea can translate into a product are, what the demand for that invention is, for one. How expensive is it to translate the idea into a working prototype that an outside company can see in terms of its commercial potential? A lot of ideas are great ideas, but it can be a very long research process to get that idea to a point that satisfies a private company that they can actually pick it up at that point and turn it into a product. So I think it really just depends a lot on the nature of the invention. But the more work that can be done on the research side to advance it towards something that actually has a practical application, the shorter the time it will be for a private company that wants to inherit that and turn it into a product of some kind. And there are a lot of, there are a few resources that can help bridge the gap between academic research and commercial production. And one of those is the SBIR program, because that's a source of money that allows researchers to focus on developing their inventions into working prototypes and partnering with a company that then has the interest and wants to make the investment into getting it market ready.
Thank you, Doctor. I have one more question. So usually when the researchers, they come up with an idea and there's a possible commercialization value in the invention, do you think if the particular researcher partners with engineers of the same field and they work together for, let's say, a couple of years or 3 years, the researchers, they will not be focusing on other publications or other works. So they have this idea and they collaborate with other engineers of the same field and try to take this idea into the market. Do you think that would actually lessen the time taken from the invention to be carried out into the market?
Yes, as a general rule, I would say it's always better to have more hands on deck and more minds working together on an idea, because obviously that means that you can accomplish more in the same period of time. If everyone has a shared vision for how they want to translate that invention into a product, then I think a team effort will always be more productive than an individual effort.
Thank you so much, Doc.
You're welcome.
All right. Joshua, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
We can kind of barely hear you, Joshua.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead with my question. So in the situation where you have a patent and you don't want to license the patent out to a company, and the researcher wants to, I guess, pursue their own company. Have you had any experience with like a researcher pursuing starting up their own company based on the patent they had? And if so, can you talk about that experience and how it differs from, let's just say, outsourcing directly to a company that's interested in the patent?
So I have had a number of researchers who have started their own company. But ultimately, they partner with another company even after they start their own company. And they do that for a couple of reasons. One, unless they want to leave their position as an academic researcher, it's not feasible really for them to take an idea, start their own company, and do all the business that's involved in developing it into a product on their own, unless they turn that into their full-time job. And most of our academic researchers that are entrepreneurial minded, they don't want to leave their university research, but they do want to pursue the commercial opportunities at the same time. And so that necessarily means they have to find a company that's already equipped to develop the idea into a product. They already have the infrastructure and the expertise to do that. And that's their full-time job. So the university researcher doesn't have to make that commitment. And that's also the other part of it. It's very, very challenging for someone to start a company and figure out everything they need to do to develop that invention into a marketable product without the assistance of a company that's already been doing it for years and has the, like I said, the manpower and the expertise to facilitate that process. It can be done. There's some great ideas out there that can mature overnight, and a person can start their own company and not even license it to someone else. But typically, we find that the most effective model for a person that does want to start their own company is to start their company, which also has some legal benefits rather than working as a sole proprietor. And then through their startup company, partnering with another company that they can license that patent to, or work in some other cooperative fashion towards developing it into a product. Even if it's not necessarily a formal license agreement, they can come up with a shorter term research collaboration, for instance, and maybe use that period to explore each other's interest before there's ever a license in place.
Okay. Well, that pretty much answers my question. I appreciate it. I do have another question. So have you ever encountered someone that just, I guess, diverged from academia then in their research and then pursued the business of, like managing their patent and, and not partnering up with another company? Like, have you ever met someone that's done that? I guess that's my question.
I know of people that that invented something and over time became more interested in the business opportunities and eventually left their university research to work for a company that was engaged in developing that into a product and making that their full-time job. I don't know anyone that's actually started up their own company and done all that on their own and left university research. Focus exclusively on their company and the commercial opportunities around that invention. That's just such a challenge without working with another company. I haven't seen that happen, but I do know researchers, a few researchers that have decided that they wanted to be in the private sector after they saw the potential come from their invention.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that
All
all?
right. Any other questions? Well, I guess I'll ask one. We have about 10 minutes left. So I'm kind of curious about the interface of tech transfer and science policy, and kind of how the public perceives tech transfer. Because, we're funded by NSF, NIH, other funding agencies to do research, but I don't think most of these require, you have to have a patent or some deliverable. It's just like, here's the intellectual merit and the potential broader impact. But I think, if you're talking about the person who's just going around every day and not a researcher, they only see science as like, oh, well, you started a company. So do you think there's more pressure because of that perception to have researchers have patents or start companies, or is that not a trend you've seen?
That's a good question. I think you would probably get a range of answers to that. I don't think there's one answer. As you may or may not know, the reason tech transfer offices like mine came into being is due to some legislation called the Bayh-Dole Act that was passed back in the 80s. And that allowed universities to open up tech transfer offices so that they could explore the commercial opportunities of the inventions that came out of the university. Prior to that act, universities could not commercialize their inventions because it was viewed as using public funds that came from these federal grants for private gain. But now, after the passage of that legislation, it just opened up the possibility for researchers who want to see the commercial benefits come from their work and profit from it while actually providing some type of service or product that benefits the public at large. So I don't think that there's a stigma, or if there's, I don't think there's any pressure necessarily to develop intellectual property as a researcher. But I think it opens up possibilities for those researchers who are interested in commercial opportunities.
Okay, thank you. One kind of last question from me. So let's say we have people in this audience who are getting their master's or PhDs, but don't have a JD or an MBA. Do they necessarily need to get a law degree, or could they just pass the patent bar to get into tech transfer? Or is it more just about getting your foot in the door and just getting the experience with tech transfer?
It's probably more about that. I don't think you have to have a law degree or a business degree to be qualified to work in an office like mine. Most people don't have both a law degree and a PhD unless they're a patent attorney. And to answer that question, you do not have to go to law school to take the patent bar. There are patent agents and patent attorneys. And patent agents are individuals that do not have JDs, but have passed the patent bar exam. And they can write and prosecute patent applications in patent law firms. Patent attorneys are the attorneys, the people who've actually passed the state bar exam as well as the patent bar And so that's the distinction there. And all of the patent law firms that I work with have both. And you will find, not in our office at UNCG, because we're a small research institution for the most part, but in larger research institutions that have bigger tech transfer offices, you'll find people with all of these backgrounds. They will have patent agents. There may be a patent attorney on board, but a patent agent would be fairly common in a large tech transfer office. And then there will be people that have maybe an undergraduate degree in business or science, not even a graduate level degree, because there's going to be a bigger division of labor in a bigger office. And so they can have people with a variety of different backgrounds working together. They don't all have to have graduate degrees in both business and law and science. I don't think that precludes you from being qualified to work in an office. If you have the interest and you've got a background in business, law, or science, I think you're eligible for this type of work.
All right, thank you. Parth?
Yes, I was just looking at this invention disclosure,
Okay.
the tech transfer process, IPSO. Is that right? That's the form I need to.
Is called innovation disclosure form.
It says invention disclosure and then says download the disclosure form from our website. Print
Yes,
the blank.
that's
That's what
it.
it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
We refer to that form both as an invention disclosure form and an innovation disclosure.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to do this and talk to my advisor. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Perfect.
Okay, so last call for questions. Got about 3 more minutes. Okay. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming and talking with us today and answering several questions. I think so far this is the session where we've had a lot of questions, so thank you.
I'm happy to do it. And I
Also
will
wanna
say
thank-
that if there are questions that come to mind after we conclude today, feel free to send those to me, and I'll do my best to follow up with you.
Okay, thank you. I also want to thank Hillary for being our student moderator this week. And that's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for coming. Have a great Friday and weekend. And Gerald, I think we can stop recording and kind of segue out of the meeting.
Well, I enjoyed talking with everyone and meeting you, and hope you all have a wonderful summer.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being
You too.
here. I learned a lot.
Good. I'm glad.
Thank you.